Hey, you guys, and welcome to another episode of Table Talk. Thank you so much for joining us, whether you're watching with us or you're listening. We are so glad you're here. We have a really fun topic today. So, Kristen, before we jump in, without giving away the topic, what do you feel like is the most interesting thing you would think of when you think of what we're going to be talking about?
What do you think of me? Let me show you my highlight reel. I think that would be it.
That's good.
Like, would you like to see my vacation photos? All 92 of them. Let me bring out the slideshow.
I actually do love a good vacation photo, so that sounds good. I think mine would be how almost dependent we are as human beings. Mm-hmm. So if you have not guessed yet, we are talking about social media today and what that looks like for us as individuals, as a community. We're going to be talking about what it looks like in the lives of parents with kids. Mm-hmm. And the fact that the new generation is surrounded by it. Like, it is everywhere.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So, Kristen, thank you so much for joining us.
I'm so happy to be here.
We're really happy to have you. I'm so glad you're willing to talk about it. So how about you tell us a little bit about you, your life, maybe some background on social media things.
Absolutely. Getting into social media, I'm the generation that grew up without it and logged onto Facebook with my student email address because that's what you needed at the time. So I feel like I'm that fun generation that is a bridge between where we grew up without it, but we launched ourselves into it. And it's been a part of us now for 20 years plus. And now having kids, I'm in, that's a big part of what we're going to be talking about is how we're bridging from being a parent who controls all of the content for your child to them entering and doing it themselves and what that looks like. It's a scary new world.
So we have
lots of tips. But then, so I started my business in connectivity in the time when businesses were not online yet. So we were actually going to businesses being like, the conversation is there and you are not part of it. So I actually went to some restaurant franchise. I actually went to the Packers, did a pitch to them. And I said, this is happening. Like, Facebook is a thing. You should have your own page. So really trying to get, and then my passion was really for small businesses. So I'm getting small businesses on, and that's how life started.
Keeps you busy.
Now I love doing it for our church. I love doing it for small businesses in the area and helping them, especially with the new world of video, where people have been like, how do I get into this new world, especially of short form video, and teaching them how to turn the phone the other way and, adding captions and voices and sounds and trends. And it's a whole world that is hard to navigate.
It is. I must say, I super appreciate your talents and your willingness to always be looking for that new thing and being willing to learn it and understand it, because I may be the communications director, but social media is not my thing. And I am totally okay saying that. It is not my realm. So when I met you and we started discussing what that would look like and you had all these ideas, I was like, oh my God, you sent it right to me. Thank you. What do you feel like are some really good positives about social media? Let's start off on a good note.
Yeah, it definitely is. Obviously, it's a great place for entertainment and inspiration. People are going there to be entertained. And I think that's what's so addicting about it. You just need that rush of a dopamine. People just pop on it for a few seconds in between tasks just to get that few seconds of entertainment, right? Another thing, that's kind of a positive and a negative, but it's definitely a place of entertainment, right? Another one is about being educated. So I think a big place that social media owns now is content that is informational. And it's to the point now where people are going to TikTok and to Instagram and using it like a search engine instead of going to Google. So even with our own family vacation, we went to Chicago with the kids. I'd never been to Chicago with the kids before. Okay. So there was an immersive experience down there. Ooh. And I wanted to know what to actually expect before buying these tickets. You just hop on TikTok and you're like, experience. And there are like people's reels of or TikToks of them walking through the experience. And then you're like, oh, that looks like something we could all enjoy and add to cart. Right. So they're also shopping on there, but using it as that search engine to find out how to do things, how things work. I mean, you need to change or fix something, you hop on and how to do it. And it's so much easier to watch a 30-second video of how to do it and get an idea of it than like reading an article. Right. So it's a great area to learn more about really anything, right? It's like YouTube University. You can learn how to do anything.
YouTube is very educational.
Yes. And not just for fun things, but actual learning.
Like, in your industry. How do I do this geometry project or like thing that I have to do?
And the last thing I would say is really about finding community, where when you think of social media, you think about bringing people together and having that community. And I think it goes beyond just, your neighbors and your friends and your family that might be out of town, which is also, those good things that we have. Absolutely. Like I have, family who lives far away, friends where I used to live, and being able to connect with them and not losing those ties, but also finding community that you might not have directly around you.
Right.
So, for instance, my sister-in-law had a health issue come up. She had never heard of this health issue before. And you're doing research and you feel like you're battling this alone. And she reached out and found an online community of other people that were battling the same thing.
That's incredible.
And it included a woman who was very local that then she was able to connect with and find local resources for her to help. Those are the success stories that really make social media a positive and bring a light to this world where you might hear a lot of darkness about it. But there are so many good things that we get out of it.
Yeah, I agree.
And like our women's connection group.
Yes.
Right here at church.
Yep.
It was like, how do these moms and these women who come into church every week, but they don't know each other, let's build a group for them. And now all the things that have wonderfully grown from that, really making true connections between people right here who may have been crossing paths week after week that now are becoming friends.
Absolutely.
It's wonderful.
It's great. I feel like there's such a give and take of social media, where you can even look back to our time through COVID, where that was people's sanity right there. Like they were living through being able to have video chats and like making all these videos and then connecting with other people because they couldn't leave their house.
Right.
So like just having that
how to bake that sourdough.
I can look up on Instagram, like, what's an easy sourdough recipe? Like, I don't have 5 or 6 hours to be like kneading this dough and everything, but like, how can I find that?
Right.
Or you were talking about educational, I think, to this one dad started this account and it was like, I think it's almost Dad, How Do I? And it was a dad showing all the things that
I love him.
A dad is, hopefully teaching their young children how to do.
Or for people who didn't have a dad to teach them all those things.
Or for people who didn't have a dad. He's like, this is a safe way. He
signs off, like, love Dad.
I know, it's so cute. But he blew up on social media. And like, what a great community he has built through that, of being educational, being loving, being supportive. And like, that was all because he's like, I'm going to take videos. Do you ever find yourself looking on your phone and seeing how much time you spent on social media?
Yeah, it's a big thing. Obviously, like 70, I think it's 70. Let me see here. I have it down. Like 78 or 99% of Americans use social media on their tablet or phone.
Okay.
78% of us use it exclusively on our phone.
Wow, that's
so
a big
it really
chunk.
is having that phone in your hand all day long.
Yeah.
That is, I think, a pivotal reason why social media has become such a big part of our day, because it's literally attached to us. Like you said, like it's always in your pocket.
It's always accessible.
The world is living in your pocket. And really being intentional about how much we're using our phone. I think there was a sermon a few weeks back, maybe even months now, but they were talking about like, do you have a panic? Do you have anxiety when you're in a different room than your phone? Can you leave the house without your phone.
Yeah.
And that kind of sensation of how tied it is. That's probably like getting into the negatives a little bit about it, but about how addicting it is. And realizing that it is so addicting that you just want to always pop on it because it's always there when you open your phone to make a call or send a text or, you know, whatever you have to do.
Absolutely.
And then there's this little notification, but like 5 sitting in the corner, and your brain just wants to pop into it.
Yeah.
Really realizing that, you know, changing those settings if you need to. I know that even cell phone companies now will have it's a Take 5 campaign where they say take 5 minutes or hours or days, whatever you need to break that cycle. So like even the people who are in these industries are promoting like, we need to take a time out. I mean, even the tycoons in the industries, they will adamantly say like, we do not allow our children on this, right?
Yes. Which is so interesting to think about.
We don't let our own kids
so what is that saying
our devices and be on our content, right?
Yes, yes. I mean, that's definitely a way that social media has changed society, is the fact that it's so accessible. Yes. It's so accessible to us and our children, no matter the age. Like, I think my niece is almost 3, and she knows how to open up my phone. Like, she knows what the YouTube app, and they don't even do a ton of technology, but she, like, knows. She's like, no, I want to watch this video. And like I said, they're not, like, a huge tech family in general, like, not a ton of screen time. But she was already, like, latching on of, like, nope, I know what that is. Like, I wanna watch that. And it's kind of a weird gut check to have of, like, how much time are we spending on it? Because I remember we did a sermon, I feel like a couple months ago, and we did a fasting challenge, and it was only for a week. Do you remember this? And at the time, I couldn't fast any food. So I'm like, I'm going to give up social media. And I'm not, like I said at the beginning, I'm not a huge social media person. And I constantly, like, was having a gut check of me just being bored for 2.5 seconds.
Absolutely.
And not even realizing I would click on it. And then I would scroll and I'd be like, what are you doing? Like, you literally don't have to be doing this right now. Like, you have a task in front of you. You have a book you can read. So every time I would do that, I would, like, close the app and go into my Bible app and, like, read something. But it was a huge mental shift for even myself to be like, how much are you subconsciously thinking that you need to be on social media, scrolling, wasting time?
Exactly.
Just, like, I don't know, being a vegetable as you, like, watch these funny videos.
Right. And not being able, I mean, you think about, like, the kids sitting in a restaurant together and they're all sitting on their phones, right?
Yes.
That's the new norm, and people are annoyed by it. But not being able to just wait without anything with you, it feels awkward. It feels like intrusive to the people around you because you're looking around the room instead of down at your phone. Like, you know, so things like that when you're talking about, like, how it's affecting society, like, how are our children? There was actually a study done too of new moms who have their little babies, right? And these are babies that are not engaging with you, but they get so much from your own face and that facial recognition and your smile and how your face lights up in front of them. And then they were finding that moms who are just with their infant, who aren't giving anything back, right, are scrolling on their phones. And so you have kind of this deadpan face when you're doing that, and how that was affecting these newborns because they were basically looking at this more lifeless face than an engaging face. That, like, kind of made my heart stop. Like, wow. You know, and then they were doing studies about it just to see. And it was just kind of a quick article. But
oh my goodness, though. But that's an effect from literally they could be weeks old at that point.
Right.
And the importance of having, like, that connection is huge. Right. But of course, as a mom, you're just like, you're just sitting there like, what do I do?
Why can't I scroll through, right? Well, and, you know, that's kind of something to be intentional about at any age of your kids, and kind of talking about how we have to be good role models.
Yes.
For our children. Yes, I know that was one of the questions that you had about how to be a good role model. And
in terms of, like, modeling a healthy relationship with social media.
Exactly.
Yes. How can we do that?
Well, one of the things that I really like to do is when my kids run into the room and I know I'm not busy, I'm not banking or sending an email or something like that, you're scrolling, and my kids come into the room, Mom, I immediately turn it off and turn it upside down. and give them my attention, because I would expect the same of them. And it's hard to do that. I mean, I don't always do that, but I try to model that. Also, like we were talking about, going without your phone,
right,
leaving your phone in the other room, not being tied to it, and having that tech-free time with your family. It's hard. When we did that fast, we fasted screens in our family.
Oh, you did too? Okay. All screens, though.
Up every remote, every phone and tablet. And I told them, I was like, Mom and Dad are doing this with you. We might be on our phones, but they're going to be, just for work.
Yeah.
Which you have to really put that on yourself. Am I just doing this for work? Like,
right.
You need to do work on your phone. And I think that's a big thing with our society too, is that, maybe phones before were for a few apps and for calling and pictures and this and that. But now you're using your phone to get your news, to do your banking, to look up directions for something. I mean, your entire world is on this little device. So when a kid is looking at you, and the kid might just have social media on their phone, right? Like, let's say a teenager. They just have social media on their phone. That's all they use it for, is to connect with their friends. So when they're looking at it, they're scrolling or they're texting or whatever they're doing, right? But for us, it could be 100 other things that we're doing. And they don't realize that we're not just scrolling through. So through their filter and their lens, they might be like, Mom's always on her phone.
Oh, yeah.
But we might not be doing that. We might be doing legitimate work that otherwise was done on paper.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or done on your computer where it more looks like you're working. It's so funny too, because working in social media, I can do 90% of my work on my phone.
Yep.
And as I started working more, my husband would be looking at me and being like, you're playing on your phone. And I'm like, I'm working.
I'm literally editing this reel.
Right. Or like editing or doing whatever you're doing. I'm like, I'm working. But to him, it just looks like I'm playing.
Yes.
And probably to our children as well. So being more intentional about telling your kids, showing them maybe what you're doing. And also having a really good algorithm, I think, is very important as parents. So we have to be intentional about what kind of content we are consuming.
Yes.
Because it is an algorithm.
Let's explain that. Maybe if people don't understand what that means, what does that mean to have an algorithm?
So basically it means that whatever kind of content you're engaging with, let's just use Instagram, for example. You like something, or you comment on something, or you even stay on that content for a couple extra seconds, then they know that you're interested in that, and they'll send you more kinds of content like that.
Okay.
And you will notice it instantly when you're using it, right? Because you watch, my parents were going to be traveling to Banff in Canada. And so I actually sent my dad a couple of reels that had come up on Banff. And then it was like, are you interested in that? Let's show you more of that. I mean, you watch one sad dog video, and all of a sudden your feed is full of these sad animals, and you're like, I need to start clicking on other kind of content because we need to get out of that, right? So cleaning up your space so that it's very child friendly. Because if I was going to have my kids start being on Facebook or TikTok, I would want them to know what kind of content is safe to watch. And my kids just started getting into YouTube. And my mantra has been, it's appropriate now. My daughter's 11 and she's like, Mom, it's appropriate. Mom, it's fine. And I said, it's appropriate now, but the next thing that you click on, the next thing that you swipe to might not be. And we had an example of that. I was swiping through, I had this very funny little video I wanted her to see. I'm like, come look at this. And then she's like, well, let's, keep going. And you keep swiping through. And I know that if it's content that is appropriate to swipe away and go to the next one. But when you are a child who's seeing this inappropriate content for the first time, it is alluring and drawing. What is that? And now all kids are going to have that kind of filter. And I hear parents say all the time, I trust my kid. I'm like,
hard.
It reminds me of when I was in college and there was a bunch of us girls talking. And she was having this hard time. And she was like, I went on this date with this guy and I went to go put on my seatbelt. And he said, don't you trust me? Why are you going to wear your seatbelt? Don't you trust me as a driver? And all of our jaws dropped when she's telling us the story, right? Wow. It's like, red flag.
No kidding.
Huge red flag. But I feel like that is kind of the same thing when you're saying, I just trust my kid to be online. You might trust your kid. They might be the best kid in the world. Right. But what about all the other drivers that are coming to hit you? What about all the other people online that are putting out inappropriate content for your child? And it's just going to swoop in. Like, it scares me to death sometimes thinking about it. You know, it's the reality. Right. And parents have to be cognizant of that and thoughtful about, your kid might know what's appropriate, but there's a world out there that has stuff at their fingertips. It's like handing them a loaded gun and being like, the safety's on. I trust them. So it's hard.
It is. So you have an 11-year-old and then you have a son. And how old is he again?
He is 8.
He is 8.
And he's a hacker already.
Get out. That's funny. That was actually me as a kid.
And I set up, you know, and as parents, you're like, oh, I'll just set up my parental, you know, limits.
Yes.
And put those on.
How are those? Do they do anything really? Like, what do they look like?
Let me tell you, they are all different. Okay. In every platform, they're different. Even in every Facebook device, they're different. Well, my kids aren't on those, so I haven't set those up yet.
Okay.
It's literally like you have a switch and you want to control how much they can watch.
Sure.
And then you realize it's only per user. And if you want, my kids hacked this right away because we got the switch and we gave it to them and we said half an hour. You get a half an hour. I thought that was a pretty fair limit. I
think so.
And then the first kid would play and then they would say, you need to put in your parental code. And so I'd put it in. And then it would be limitless because the code was entered. And Switch says, because I looked this up, because I was like, I have 2 kids. They're like, no, you would have to get another Switch because there's like no good reason for it. As far as I can tell, the people at Nintendo do not have small children. Or they just want to sell more Switches.
Yes.
But then they were like, you can go first. You can have the first turn. Thinking like, I'm like, oh, they're being so nice with the Switch. No, they hacked the system. And then you can't just have like a different 4-digit passcode for everything. So like you're trying to think of something kind of easy because your brain is already filled of your passcodes.
Yeah.
Now you have to come up with these new passcodes. And then Jacob was like, of course it's just like 2222. Ah, man. Like he's totally going to know. And for every device, it's different. It was really tricky. I don't know Kindle software. So when he had a little Kindle for kids and I had to figure it out. And so then I'm asking other parents, and that's a really big tip for me, is to have that constant communication, not just with your kids about how to navigate this new world, but having it with other parents that are going through the same thing, because you will find so many more tips and tricks with other parents about like, well, this is how that works. And this is how I did it. And this is how our family is doing it. Because you don't know what you don't know, right? And when you're thrust into this new world, you need to become an expert on it really fast or it gets out of control. When Jacob started doing Roblox, I was like, I don't really know anything about this. And it was the first time where my kid was learning a new technology that I didn't know. Like, you're so used to teaching your kids everything.
Right.
And he's like, I want this app. My friends have this app. And then...
That's it right there. My friends have this, so I want it.
Right.
The struggle.
It is a struggle. So we downloaded it for him. And then I was talking even to other parents. Is this safe? Is your kid's on it? Can they connect? How do we do this? And then I went onto the app one day and I was like, I need to sit down. I need to figure this out. I need to watch a couple 15-minute YouTube videos on how to do this. And I log in and I'm setting things up. And I'm like, he's got 25 random friends that are, and then I have to go through and delete all of those and have the conversation with him. And it's a lot. It's a lot thrust in as a parent right away.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing is the fact that you took the time to explore it. Because come on, you're a parent, you're busy. You have 10,000 other things that are on your mind that you're thinking about. I mean, technology is a great thing, not just as a distraction for your kids so you can get stuff done, but it's also like really helpful. Like sometimes you just need your time and that's okay. Like, I don't think there's any shame of like, oh, I just need a minute. Like, let's just watch this movie or you can play on this app for a little bit because you need some time too, just to kind of be. But I feel like that's so hard if you don't. Like a lot of people would be like, well, let's just download this and then you can play it and be fine. And then you look at it later and you're like, are you playing with guns? Like, are you shooting people? Like, what are you doing in this game? And you're not really comprehending what it is. And your kid's just like, well, all my friends play it, which like they want to be part of the fun, right? It's the social aspect of it. It's like they want to be connected. They want to be doing what their friends are doing. It's all of that. But I also think you brought up a great point of having those conversations with your kids. So what are some conversations you have really prioritized having in terms of limits and expectations of social media? Because 11 and 8 are getting to the age. I mean, 11, that's pretty darn close of like, can I have my own phone? And I don't know if she does or not already, but like, what does that look like?
Cousin does. She doesn't.
Okay.
I know that there are friends that bring it to school and this and that. We will not. We are the last house to not have Netflix. She already reminds me of that. And I feel like I'm more adamant about not getting it, even though there's stuff that I want to watch, just because that they have enough content to consume. We don't need another thing. I feel like you need to be deprived of something as a child. Like, deprive you of something, right? You can tell that story when you're in therapy someday. But so we talk about that when they got into the world of YouTube. And some things are not your decision. Sorry, it's a little divergent, but sometimes as a parent, you're giving this to your kid, right? You're like, you're ready for this. We know you're responsible. Here's this new thing that you can play with and have. Sometimes it's not. And I've heard that from blended families where it's a whole nother level because you might have your rules in your house. And then there's another house that they're going to that has another set of rules.
Right.
Or they buy them the phone and now you're having to deal with that and set those expectations and boundaries. But they might have different ones. And how confusing is that for a kid?
Absolutely.
Our daughter was sent home with a Chromebook from her school this year. And the Chromebook had all of her schoolwork. She'd have to go onto like Google Drive and do a slideshow or something fun like that. And they had games that they could play in different apps. But she was smart enough to know she could go into the browser, and they even had a YouTube app right on the desktop of it, and she could pop into YouTube. And I called the school district and I had this very emotional conversation with them. I'm like, you're sending this home and she just wants to be on it, and she'll say that she's on, school stuff, and it's like putting a red button in front of your kid and being like, don't push that.
Yeah.
And so she's going onto YouTube. And I'm trying to navigate this. And finally, I just was like, if you're going to be on it, you can be on it, but in the kitchen. So then you're trying to have like clever ways to be a parent, right? And be like, how are we going to do this? Okay, you can do it, but under my supervision kind of thing, right?
Absolutely.
When you're in a blended family, how do you control that as well? And then with those conversations, so with YouTube coming up, then I'm explaining to them that this is all fake. When you're watching TV, I think in movies, you kind of assume that it's scripted. It is like this pretend world. But when you're in YouTube, it's people doing much more reality stuff. Yeah. And so then I'm explaining to them that, they scripted this out. It looks like these kids are trying to find this thing they can't, but they know where, like, I'm trying to explain it to them because, now everyone wants to be a famous YouTuber and create this, do the same thing. Also, with Instagram, I was actually just explaining to my daughter on the way here how it works. And she had some kind of question. I was kind of explaining to her what I would be talking about today as well.
Oh, cool.
And so I told her, I kind of came up with this analogy of like, let's say that the family, we're having a bored day. It's been boring all day, right? So we're going to bake cookies. And you and your brother, we get everything out. And then it's, I wanted to stir. And then he wanted to stir. And you get more chocolate chips than me. And it becomes like this big, just not fun thing, right? And mom's yelling, I'm just going to do it myself. You guys go in time out. Like you can imagine the scenario, right? But then when we have the cookies, we take a picture of all of us smiling. Yay, we made cookies today. Look at this. And we post it. Your friend sees it and they say, I had the worst day today. I didn't get to make cookies. And how do they feel then? And that's what social media is in a nutshell. I feel like it's your the highlight reel. And you're not getting the full picture. You can go on vacation. You can have like the worst travel day. And then you're like, we're here.
Yeah.
So kind of like prepping them for those expectations early on, even before we get there, and having those constant conversations with your kids, that they're not, because, you know, having those filters and having that highlight reel is really causing depression in a lot of our youth.
Yes.
Always comparing themselves to others. We talk all the time that comparison is the thief of joy. So setting that up and polarizing issues among people, feeling left out. Now, a place that was supposed to bring connections and community is a place of isolation for certain people and not being included in conversations. So letting your children know that how valuable they are, how important they are, and setting that lens up so that they know that, you know, things that they're seeing are not real, and finding good connections with them, making sure that they're, you know, connected to only friends and family members at first. Things like that.
Absolutely. Do you feel like there's ever an age where it's too young to start setting those expectations? Because like I said, my niece is almost 3 and she knows like a phone has fun things.
Right. But well, even just like keeping them from clicking on pop-ups and things like that. Because that'll damage your $1,000 device.
Oh, yes, it will. Yes, it will. And like at that young of an age, they don't comprehend what that means. But like,
right, they can't even read.
They can't even read.
But they don't know what this, you know, thing says. They just want it out of there. Tap the button and it disappears.
Absolutely. But I feel like having an 11-year-old and 8-year-old and in that zone of ages, like they very clearly understand what like they would like to use social media for, not necessarily what it represents. Like we talked about the highlight reel. They don't know the difference between real life versus this is just literally a snapshot of 60 seconds of someone's life. Like they don't know what that looks like. But how do you feel is like a good way to handle those conversations and like at younger ages of like, this is actually reality? Like, do you feel like it stems from the parent of being like, it's okay to have a bad day and it's okay to like have these moments of being bored? You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, definitely. And it's a conversation that has to grow with the child, obviously. So starting really young, putting some of those things in place about just how much time you're spending on it. And then as they get older and start joining friends, making sure that they're very intentional about having the right friends connected. My kids don't even really know what Facebook and Instagram is, and who knows if they'll even ever use it.
Right. That's fair. That's fair.
Except for, you know, connecting with Messenger. That was a new one that was for us. So there's Messenger for kids.
Okay.
So it was a great way for them to pop on and you connect with their friends a lot of times through your own friends. That's because who are your friends' kids? Who are your kids friends with? Like you might be friends with their parents and then you connect them through that. And Meta has done a really good job of having everything filter through your own Facebook and Messenger account. So nothing can be deleted. Parents have full access and having that expectation with your kid. I mean, when my kids are able to play on a phone, they know it's mom's phone. It's not their phone. And anytime they call it my phone, I'm like, but it's really mom's phone. Keeping those like little things on, setting the expectation that there is no sense of privacy for you on this device. Everything is transparent. I can go into it whenever I want. I can delete whatever I want. I can look through your photos. Your face should be able to open your child's phone. Similar to what you would expect of a trusting, even husband and wife relationship.
For sure.
If you can't get into that phone,
are there reasons why you can't get
we don't
into
have a
this
lock on
phone?
our kids' door. There's no expectation that I can't come into her room whenever I want. And the same thing with the phone. But things are changing. Rumblings are talking about how unsafe social media is for kids. It's pretty new. It's only been out there for 20 years, period. Let's say 10 years or even 5 years to the capacity that it is now, right? So it's so new. And now people are starting to realize how detrimental it can be, especially for youth.
Right.
So in New York, the governor just signed a bill, I think in the last month. And I want to make sure I have this right.
Yeah,
and I kind of want to read it because it's very specific. Okay, so the governor in New York, might have happened in California too.
Okay.
Under legislation, feeds like apps like TikTok and Instagram would be limited for people under the age of 18 to post from accounts that they follow rather than content suggested by the algorithm. So we talk about like how strong an algorithm is. So if I'm following, my 10 family members and 10 friends, I am only seeing content from them. I am not getting that suggested content from outside that circle.
That's way healthier, though.
Rather than content suggested, it would also block platforms from sending minors notifications, talking about the addicting part of it, always having that notification pulling you in. Something happened, come check.
Right.
Is very addictive, especially to all of us. But for a kid to want to tap on those notifications constantly. And then not having suggested posts or notifications from midnight to 6. So think about like those teenagers that are losing, when you're losing sleep, when you're losing connections with your friends in real life, when you're not doing well in your schoolwork. Those are all signs of this becoming a problem. But I think adults are realizing that this is a bigger problem that's growing faster than we can control it. So things are putting in place. They've even been talking about putting on a warning, like a Surgeon General's warning, like on cigarettes and alcohol. Is that a kind of warning that we need to have now on social media?
It's a big deal.
That like opens up a whole can of worms because are you with freedom of speech, are you putting that kind of warning on a magazine saying, warning, you shouldn't read from this type of magazine or should you not read from this kind of newspaper?
Because no matter what, you're ingesting this information, no matter what it is.
Right. So like who gets to choose what content should have a warning? You know what I mean? Like that's a whole other area. Yeah. But people's, the wheels are turning of how do we control this for our young people under 18. And that is why I'm so careful with my kids to the point of I was working for a local blog, a parenting blog that would post things to do around town very innocently. And I realized that I was taking so many photos of my kids, even just from behind, because I didn't want their face all over this, blog's social media. So it was always from behind. But wherever I went, I was taking photos of my kids or the space that we were in. And then I'd have to come home. And it is for work, but you're editing and you're posting and you're figuring out ways to use this content and, making little videos all the time. And it was for work for me, but for some parents, that is the amount of time that they're spending taking photos of their families and editing them and posting them. And that's when people say, like, we're taking a step away from social media now because they realize how bad it's gotten for them. But then when you're posting all of these photos of your kids, I guess my daughter got to an age where I was like, would she want this up? If she ever got her own account one day and she goes on and sees all of this stuff that I've been posting about her, how would she feel about that?
Because that's her life.
Because I know that if I post a photo of me and my husband and he'll be like, I don't look great in that. You need to take that down now. And I feel that way. Fair. Like we have that same problem here at church. Like you might take a photo of this very unique moment that someone is having at the church, but you're like, would you want
It's
would
special to them.
Would you want that
Yep.
moment
We do. We talk about that
posted?
all the time.
And so for kids not to have that, what's the word? That consent.
Because they don't know.
Right. Because they don't know.
Yep.
And I felt, what age is it where you should feel like you need your child's consent to be posting information about them online? That opens up a whole nother...
It does. It does. I mean, there's so much within social media that we could talk about, and I feel like we just scratched the surface.
I know.
But I super appreciate everything you've said, and I mean, you've given people a lot to think about. So we'd actually love to hear your experience with social media, pros, cons, your thoughts, feelings as a parent as you're navigating this. Let us know in the comments, because I'm always curious. I always want to know how other people feel about it, and everyone does everything differently. And honestly, there's not a right or wrong reason as a right or wrong way to parent through social media. It's whatever is best for your family. Every kid is different. But thank you so much for being willing to share your thoughts. Yeah, absolutely. This has been great. I mean, like I said, social media it's a beast. There's a lot on there, but yeah, I really appreciate it. So thank you so much. Yeah. And thank you guys.
And I'd love to hear what everyone says, because that's a conversation that can just keep going.
I agree. Part of the community aspect of it, right?
Right.
See? You can just go back and forth.
And if they have any questions, they can reach out too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Always. Just let us know if you have any comments, questions. But thanks so much for watching, listening with us. Kristen, thank you again for joining us for Table Talk.
Thank you.
This has been great. We'll see you guys for the next one.